President Xi Jinping meets French and EU leaders in Paris, saying China regards Europe as an important dimension of its foreign policy. The Israeli army orders Palestinians to evacuate from parts of Rafah in southern Gaza, and ahead of an expected military operation. And locally, the exchange fund posts a $54 billion investment gain in the first quarter of the year. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. President Xi Jinping today held a trilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Paris. She arrived in Paris on Sunday for a state visit at the invitation of Macron. This is the second state visit by China's head of state to France. Xi will also visit Serbia and Hungary during his three-nation trip. Nasri Karim with more.
Full state visit honors for President Xi Jinping as he greets his host, French President Emmanuel Macron. After a formal ceremony at the Invalides Monument, Xi and Macron held bilateral talks at Élysée Presidential Palace. The two leaders also held a meeting with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Macron and von der Leyen are putting pressure on Xi over what they say is China's willingness to flood the global market with cheaper electric vehicles and energy products. They also want to push him on using his influence with Russian President Vladimir Putin to bring an end to the Kremlin's war with Ukraine. Xi said during the meeting that China always approaches its relations with the European Union from a strategic and long-term perspective. He wants Beijing's relations with France and the EU to reinforce each other. Xi's arrival in Paris on Sunday coincided with the publication of a signed article by the Chinese leader in France's Le Figaro news outlet. In the article, Xi outlined his vision for Chinese-French relations as the two countries celebrate the 60th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties. It includes working with France to open new vistas for relations, further opening up China to the world while deepening cooperation with France and other countries, and China's strengthening communication and coordination with France to uphold world peace and stability. Xi praised France and its former wartime leader Charles de Gaulle over his resolve to seek diplomatic relations with China amid Cold War skepticism in the West. The Chinese leader also hailed French culture, saying the country produced a galaxy of philosophers, writers and artists whose influence spread across the world. Xi noted that French nationals helped to launch China's Fujian Navy Yard and Fujian Naval Academy more than 150 years ago. And a century ago, France was the first country to welcome government-sponsored students from China. Some of them later returned home to contribute to the founding and development of the new China. Getting down to business, Xi said China welcomes the import of more quality French farm products, cosmetics and investment. He said China's manufacturing sector has been fully opened up and will expand market access to telecom, medical and other services. Nasri Karim, TVB News.
The Israeli army today ordered tens of thousands of people in the southern Gaza city of Rafah to begin evacuating, signaling that a long-promised ground invasion could be imminent. The announcement comes as international mediators from the U.S., Egypt and Qatar try to broker a ceasefire. Hamas and Qatar warned that an invasion of Rafah could derail the talks. Israel has described Rafah as the last significant Hamas stronghold after 7 months of war and insists on sending in troops to defeat the group. An Israeli army spokesman says some 100,000 people were being ordered to move to a nearby humanitarian zone in Muwasi. He said Israel was preparing a limited scope of operation and would not say whether this was the beginning of a broader invasion of the city. Earlier, 3 Israeli soldiers were killed in a rocket attack claimed by Hamas, forcing the IDF to close its Kerem Shalom crossing. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme said the north of Gaza is suffering from a full-blown famine. This as Israel shuts down broadcaster Al Jazeera from operating inside the country. NBC News has the story.
Tonight, another massive blow to the dire humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Israel shutting down the Kerem Shalom crossing after they say Hamas fired rockets towards the border. Hamas says they targeted IDF headquarters. The closure a significant setback. In an exclusive interview on Meet the Press this morning, the head of the World Food Program saying parts of the enclave already gripped by famine.
So what I can explain to you is that there is famine, full-blown famine in the north, and it's moving its way south.
This as the latest round of negotiations on the ceasefire ended today. Hamas calling for an end to the war, a complete withdrawal of IDF troops, and for people to be able to return to their communities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this morning doubling down, saying ending the war in Gaza would keep Hamas in power. And tonight, a source with knowledge of the matter told NBC News CIA Director William Burns is in Doha and will travel to Israel this week. Meanwhile, the Israeli cabinet voting to shut down broadcast company Al Jazeera from operating in the country. Al Jazeera releasing a statement saying in part, "We will make sure that we report both sides despite the fact that we have lost the coverage from inside Israel." Megan Fitzgerald, NBC News.
Pro-Palestinian protests at college campuses continue across the U.S., with the students now targeting graduation ceremonies. NBC has more.
Tonight, colleges nationwide grappling with ongoing demonstrations. Before sunrise at the University of Southern California, officers cleared this encampment. Protesters left willingly. No one was arrested.
Free, free, free Palestine.
The pro-Palestinian demonstrators calling for a ceasefire and for the school to divest from Israel. University officials say they called in police about 12 hours after warning the encampment was a violation of, quote, policies and the law, and that protesters could face arrest.
And when the students were cleared by LAPD from the center of campus, they shut down this main street. And they also chanted, "They do not care, they will be back."
At the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, police clashed with demonstrators as they tried to take down an encampment. The school says at least 25 were arrested for trespassing. And it's not just schools. At the Art Institute of Chicago, 68 were arrested and charged with trespassing. Now, school administrators coast to coast trying to determine whether or not to change graduation plans.
We will not, we will not rest.
In Ann Arbor yesterday, nearly 75 protesters interrupted the beginning of commencement at the University of Michigan. Demonstrators chanting before being moved.
They have the right to protest.
A lot of these people, their senior year of high school, their graduation was during COVID, so they already had that ruined, and then now you got this going on.
Some universities like USC have canceled their main graduation ceremony, while others have increased their security measures.
In a joint operation, police and the Department of Health, Tobacco and Alcohol Control Office have seized a batch of drugs suspected to be anesthesia drug etomidate in Yunlong. And for the first time, smoking devices for the drug were also seized. A 19-year-old female shop assistant was arrested. Officers raided this fashion store in Yunlong after receiving complaints from schools that some shops were selling alternative smoking products to students in the district. 42 e-cigarettes containing etomidate, 4 smoking devices, 11 e-cigarettes and 510 vape pods were seized. Authorities say they have stepped up tobacco control enforcement and campaigns against the purchase of e-cigarettes since February. The exchange fund recorded an investment gain of $54.3 billion in the first quarter of the year, despite underwhelming performances of the local stock market. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority expects a high interest rate environment to persist for some time, and investment risks will remain. For the second consecutive quarter, the exchange fund recorded gains, an investment gain of $54.3 billion in the first quarter this year. Among the major components, investment income from other equities amounted to $36.3 billion. Bond investment gains reduced both year-on-year and quarter-on-quarter. Still, it raked in $25.1 billion. Hong Kong stock investment, however, lost $2.3 billion. $3.9 billion was disbursed to the fiscal reserves. Eddie Yu, chief executive of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, said the investment outlook for the second quarter is hard to pinpoint. He said the authority will continue to adopt a defensive strategy to maintain the liquidity of the exchange fund, given the geopolitical tension in the Middle East and other factors.
The uncertainty about the U.S. interest rate path, which will depend on the path of inflation in the U.S. And whether the mainland economic growth will maintain a stable and growth pattern, I think that will affect mainly the Hong Kong and Chinese market, but also the global markets.
At a meeting of the Legislative Council's panel on financial affairs, lawmakers also called for better preparation from HKMA.
What should we do when we are faced with sustained periods of high interest rates? We should perform risk management.
Is there room to lower the rates? I'm afraid there is no room to do so for Hong Kong interest rates because this would affect the capital flow. Policy-wise, is there anything we can do to support the local economy? Of course there is. We can support SMEs, we can take forward major projects.
Meanwhile, the number of negative equity cases in the first quarter hit a 20-year high with 32,000 cases, while the non-performing loan ratio has doubled from 0.03 to 0.06%. The Monetary Authority said that's due to the low base number in comparison, so the increase only involved around a dozen cases. And for this year's International Financial Leaders Investment Summit, which is slated for November 18th to 20th, you said leaders of 50 to 60 international financial institutions and banks have confirmed to attend. More than 750,000 mainland tourists were estimated to have visited the city over the Golden Week holidays. The figure is an increase of over 20% from last year. But many business sectors noted the holiday period failed to bring about an expected boost in revenue. This as Executive Director of the Hong Kong Tourism Board, Ding Chang, emphasized that businesses in the city must undergo a painful transformation period and should not just focus on returning to pre-pandemic times. Some representatives from the tourism sector also pointed out that the city needs to adapt to changing consumption patterns of mainland tourists. They said many visitors would bypass traditional mainland travel agencies and instead organize self-guided tours by following itineraries provided by popular social media platform Xiaohongshu. Still ahead, nursing schools under the Hospital Authority plan to shorten their program duration by 6 months to 3.5 years. And at least 14 more kindergartens in the city will be closing down. At least 14 kindergartens announced that they will cease operations in this school year. The education sector expects that the wave of closures will continue. The latest one is Right Mind International Nursery and Kindergarten in Apley Chow, which will close down in July. The institution issued a letter to parents last Thursday about the decision. Some parents said they had made a one-off payment of around $20,000 for the kindergarten's construction works. They said it's unlikely they will get the money back now. Earlier, Greenfield English International Garden in Ma Lan Shan announced its closure in July, citing financial reasons. Kenville Kindergarten in Kowloon Tong also plans to close down in 2026. Lawmaker Tang Fei of the Hong Kong Federation of Education Workers said these kindergartens do not receive government subsidies, so it's harder to maintain their financial soundness given the wave of emigration among middle-class families. He added there are not a lot of toddlers who come along with newcomers to Hong Kong through the government's talent schemes. The Hospital Authority is planning to shorten the duration of professional diploma in nursing programs in its nursing schools from 4 years to 3.5 years. The nursing school said there will be no change in course content and that the new arrangement will benefit students' ability to practice. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Telling patients that they may experience nausea after taking medications and what they need to pay attention to. And caring for those suffering from spinal injuries. These are all part of a learning simulation for students of the Hospital Authority's nursing program. This third-year nursing student at Queen Elizabeth Hospital School of General Nursing says she treasures her time in medical practice as it allows her to bond with patients, recalling a time when she cleaned the wounds of an elderly woman. Residents who wish to be nurses can apply for the 3 nursing schools under the Hospital Authority as an alternative to a bachelor's degree at higher education institutions. Applicants must reach certain requirements in their Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education or DSE exams, including a score of level 3 in Chinese and English, as well as level 2 in mathematics. The Hospital Authority is planning to shorten the program duration from 4 years to 3.5 years in the new school year starting in September. Bonnie Au, principal of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Nursing School, hopes the condensed course period will allow students to learn essential nursing skills at a faster pace. This, as the nursing school principal said, further considerations have to be made before deciding on whether there will be an increase in student admissions to cope with the city's shortage of nursing staff. Students who have completed the program are qualified for work as registered nurses. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Adventist Hospital announced the establishment of a robotic surgery center today. The hospital also introduced 2 cutting-edge robotic systems, which focus on spinal surgery and total knee replacement. Min Mo-Sang-ai reports.
This doctor is using a screwdriver to implant screws into a practice model spine. With the help of the robotic surgery system, which incorporates artificial intelligence and real-time navigation technology, the spinal operation can now be conducted more efficiently. This is a robotic surgery system for total knee replacement. Steve Zhang, the hospital's consultant in orthopedics and traumatology, said the system increases the precision of operations.
So I will put my cutting saw on the jig, which is secure on the bone, with the help of the robotic arm. So for example, I will cut like this now. So I can decide precisely how much millimeter I'm going to cut by this method.
Oliver underwent robotic-assisted spinal surgery in March. He said pain left with him no choice but to have the operation.
As soon as I stood up straight, or I was walking, I could feel myself pushing down. Something was pushing on a nerve. As soon as you lose that ability to be able to walk and not be in pain, you will do anything to get rid of it. As soon as you go down the back operation route, you are taking a risk.
The hospital's spinal authority said the adoption of the system has multiple strengths, including reducing radioactive emissions over the course of an operation.
Traditionally, we would use a lot of X-rays for localization of the instrumentation, but because we use the navigation together with the robotics, we can actually eliminate the use of lots of X-ray.
While the hospital has been providing robotic system surgery since 2013, its president said that advances in such technology are a main driver behind the setting up of the center.
A few years back, actually, we looked at the robotic arm for the spine, but during that time, we felt that the technology is not mature enough, so we did not. That's why we did not pursue that when we set up the whole arm on the navigation system.
The hospital hopes that advanced robotic surgery systems can provide a more accurate treatment for patients. Min Mo-Sang-ai, TVB News.
The exhibition of luminous art installations in Admiralty has been extended until early June. The public can visit without reservation starting from Wednesday. About 900,000 people have viewed these eggs since the end of March, when they were first presented to the public. The Leisure and Cultural Services Department decided to extend the display period of the installations because of their popularity. The exhibition is being subsidized by the government to the tune of $50 million. Appa Wu, head of the Art Promotion Office, said the exhibition remains free of charge in the hope that people from a variety of sectors can enjoy the event. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.